if you get onto it early before it gets too embedded, that's where the difference is made.
Almost every negative circumstance can be turned into a positive influence on the world.
I had a deep fear that if I actually said anything, my career would be over. My main message is just trying to break down those cultural barriers to help seeking.
Welcome to Keep Hustling with. Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Craig Semple. Craig, thank you so much for being here today.
Aaron, thanks for having me, mate.
It's a pleasure. This may shock you. You are not my first guest from Australia. The time zone still gets me. So thanks for waking up early and thanks for having some fun with us.
Yeah, no, I've had a couple of podcast interviews in the US, and I really love it because it's a bit of it's nice to hear the comparisons between our two countries, particularly in my topics.
Well, I mean, also that you automatically went on accent, so like you're already ahead here.
Yeah,
I want to go back. Everyone should read the bio. We're going to talk about the books. We're going to talk about the bio. I have a lot of questions for you, but what made you decide to pursue a career in law enforcement? What was that like? What was it like going through the ranks? And then I want to discuss that further. But I'm always fascinated by people who decide. Everyone. I don't know about what it's like there, but growing up, everyone wants to be a firefighter, a police officer, or an athlete here, and then nobody ends up doing it. So athletes are athletes probably because they can't. Policemen and firefighters because their parents tell them they can't, or they're scared, or they're too wimpy, or they don't realize. So, to take us through that journey.
no, it's a good question. Look, this will surprise you considering where I went, but I actually wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a kid at high school. So I was I'm right into the ocean and everything to do with that. But I didn't really apply myself too much at school, so my marks to get into university were pretty poor. So it was actually my grandfather who was my role model in my life who first suggested it to me. And I'm a pretty big bloke, pretty tall and everything. Back then I was quite skinny though, and I thought about it, but I didn't really pursue it too hard. And then one of my high school girlfriends, her brother-in-law, who's still one of my best mates, he was a detective in the police over here, and I used to go when I left high school. I used to go for drinks with him and his colleagues, and I would sit there and listen to the stories that they were telling from their work environment. And that was probably the final seal of the deal for me. I just thought, what an amazing life, how exciting. And so I took a leap of faith. At the time I was working as a labourer in a steelworks here. I live in a very industrial town. It certainly was back when I was a kid. And so I took a leap of faith. I joined the cops, and honestly, I was only 19 when I graduated, so I was the youngest cop in the entire police force. It's a big police force over here in New South Wales. It's one of the largest in the world. We've got about 17,000 serving police. So I joined, and mate, honestly, the life I had for the 25 years I was in the police force, I wouldn't compare it, and I wouldn't swap it with anything else I've ever done or anything I could have done. It was just so exciting. My first station I got sent to was probably one of the toughest patrols to get sent in Australia at the time. We were having quite regular riots. We had a lot of racial problems going on at the time, and cars getting firebombed, and every time we drove down certain areas, police cars would get smashed with bricks and rocks and all sorts of other stuff as well. But it was just as a young fella joining a job like that, where I could just get that massive adrenaline hit every single time I put on my uniform and my gun. It was just second to none. But I was in uniform for a couple of years, and then I started my plainclothes career as an investigator, and most of my 25 years as a detective. And the part of the thing that drew me to that line of work was, I told you before, I love the ocean, I love fishing, all that sort of thing. I think I just love the thrill of the hunt. I just love hunting down bad people and getting that win at the end of the game.
It's amazing to me because obviously a person should feel fulfilled in their career. And looking back on the 25 years of serving the public or being in law enforcement and regretting it, obviously would not be a great way to have a life. But it's amazing to me, and we're obviously going to go through the rest of your story, but that after all of it, you still say you wouldn't change it. And the thrill or the adrenaline, it's almost like if I could take you back 12 years, put the uni back on. Is that how you say it? Uni or uniform? I thought that I just dropped it.
Whatever. Yeah.
I felt like it was good like that. I didn't want to say, I felt like uni. Uni
Yeah.
made me sound Australian, man. So like,
Nah.
but I feel like, but it's like you would do it. And what's amazing to me is that when people, the evolution in that, it's not just helping others, it's seeing the things that you saw, dealing with serious stuff, homicides and gangs and all that kind of stuff, and the impact that it had on you, and yet you wouldn't change it. To me, that's a lot of what Keep Hustling is about. What a lot of what so many young people today struggle with, I think, or the world would be a better way to say it is the world would be a better place if people didn't allow those small doubts, those slightly difficult times to stand in the way of their dreams. If more people who wanted to become police officers because they thought it was cool and awesome and their calling did it and didn't listen to the naysayers. If more people chased the dreams, didn't just chase dollars and cents and everything else like that, to me, we'd probably have a better world. But 25 years, can you tell us, just for the entertainment of the listeners, your favorite case that you worked on, or the craziest one, or anything that stands out when you look back?
Look, I mean, there's a lot. Even with my first book who got published, it was I just had to focus on a few stories because there's just so many and it was just too big. But probably the actual last investigation that which is one that eventually pushed me out over the edge mentally, which is why I left the police force. It was an outlaw motorcycle gang. So we had a lot of bikie gangs over here in Australia. We got in particular in the command that I worked at. So always look for areas that are logistically, geographically really good for business, particularly in big commercial, transport hubs on major highways, those sort of things. So the last command I had, we had 6 individual bikie gangs in the one command for a population of, we had probably about 75,000 people. That's a lot of bikie gangs for one small town. And really, when you work in a small country town like that, where it's not like in the city where I could go and target a few bikies or gangsters and then I could go home and they didn't know where I lived. In the country areas, in those smaller areas, they knew where you lived. They know what car you drive, where your wife works, where your kids go to school. It's totally different. And obviously a lot of that work too was quite hands-on at times, so it was quite violent. So I worked on bikie gangs. Probably the last 10 years of my career, it was probably the most predominant type of work I was doing over that time. And the last job we did, it was basically 18 months where we were totally offline from the rest of our colleagues. There was just 3 of us working this one job. We had phones tapped and we had, we bugged houses and cars and stuff like that. Had undercover operatives out in the field buying all the drugs, getting all the evidence that we needed. And look, there was particularly the last 9 months of that investigation where we went tactical. It was sort of, we're doing a lot of raids on a regular basis. We had, look, at the end of the job, we had 13 raids we had to do around the region, all by the clock for safety reasons. And it's one of the things with that job, when you're taking on like such violent people, like I was dealing with these guys. Bit of context: before I joined the police force, I wasn't someone who, when I was in school, I wasn't one of the kids who stood up to bullies. I'd rather turn
Ain't that something?
Run from trouble, yeah. So, and this is the thing, getting back to what you were saying at the start of what you just talked about there before, Aaron, is with young people these days, is that no one's looking for adventure now like they used to. And I talk about a resilience a lot, and I've done that with talking to kids about it as well. And you build resilience by actually exposing yourself to the things that challenge you. So for me, with that sort of that mindset when I was a kid in high school, not taking on the bullies, well, when I joined a job like this, where I was expected to run actually at danger rather than from it, um, through a process of doing that on so many occasions, is just like running headlong into my fears, you sort of build resilience to fear over the course of a law enforcement career. And for me, over time, I've actually got to the point where not only did I um, not only had I overcome my fear response to standing up to dangerous people, like I actually felt towards the end like I was truly bulletproof, just through that whole process. So, and that's a pretty good warning sign that something's not right too, because everyone should experience fear. So that last job, I mean, we went out, we did all those 13 raids. That was probably one of the biggest jobs I ever ran. We locked up 25 bikies. There's 3 blokes working on this job over 1.5 years. But yeah, there was so many others too. We did some drug work on. There was one job over here that we ran not long before that on. We call it the NRL, National Rugby League over here, which is equivalent to your NFL. You've seen rugby league?
Sure.
Yeah, I think we've just
I
had
prefer
some of
Aussie
our.
rules football.
Yeah, well, that's my Aussie rules is my favourite sport as well.
Aussie rules.
Yeah, Aussie
For
rules,
Aussie
mate.
rules football.
So we ran this job on. It was a elite sports people, big drug investigation over here. It got national headlines. So there was a whole range of different things, but probably the ones that gave me the most satisfaction were actually the homicides, particularly when I was able to, get justice for the surviving family of people whose lives have been stolen from them. It's pretty hard to put in the words, but when you've got people putting their whole lives in your hands, what like faith in the justice system, faith that you are going to bring that justice for their lost son, daughter, husband, wife. That there's a particular relationship that we build with our victims, and particularly when it comes to homicide, it's next level. So when it came to those sort of works, the dozens of homicides that I'm involved myself in, I've still got lifelong friendships, even out of the police force, with a lot of those victims' families.
When it works, justice is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, people who don't always get it, mate, unfortunately, but it's not a perfect
I asked you
system.
before
I've
we
never heard of
started.
one.
I
Yeah.
I asked you before we started if there was anything was off limits. So you said no. So here we go. Buckle up. In the end, it took a toll on you. You medically retired from law enforcement in 2013 due to psychological injuries. This show is about hustling through moments. It's about growing. It's about not about the why. Everybody has a why, but the how. In order to get to your how, I'd like to begin by asking, can you take us to the moments where you felt like it was starting to unravel? And
Absolutely.
and what it
Look,
was like being that person who still was showing up for as a serious job. You're not just sitting behind a desk, tapping a couple keys. And yet it doesn't feel right, it doesn't seem right, and things are kind of moving in a different direction.
yeah. Look, it's easy in hindsight to put the jigsaw back together, but at the time, I had so many warning signs that I had mental health problems. Yes, particularly the last 10 years of my career. Huge nightmares. There was a stack of different stuff. There was stepping stones along the way. One particularly bad homicide, which was I see as a catalyst for my eventual demise. But my brother was also stabbed in the police force too. He nearly died. His partner died on top of him on the street, both stabbed by a drug dealer. And so he joined the police as well. So there was a lot going on over those years, but I basically lived. So I had this thing called post-traumatic stress disorder for a long time. I knew I had it, um, but I kept it secret, and it sort of falls into the workplace culture that we had, societal culture in a way too. Is that we in law enforcement, you just have this mindset. You've got to be tough enough to take everything, and that's a real big barrier to putting your hand up when you know you've got problems. So I chose not to. So what I did instead was, so post-traumatic stress disorder was an underlying condition, but it's not what brought me down in the end. What brought me down was the way I coped with it or failed to cope with it. So my coping strategies, massive alcohol abuse. So that's one side of it. And the other coping strategy was I tried to outrun it. So I was always trying to make myself bigger and tougher, boxing and gym work and everything that I was doing. But I was also maintaining massively high levels of stress. So I was always plugging myself in the adrenaline socket of law enforcement. And what happened? Chronic sleep problems over a long period of time, huge amounts of stress over a long period of time, and alcohol abuse. All those things beautifully work together to completely burn me out. So PTSD was the underlying issue, but it was burnout that finished me. And with that went depression, and I mean serious major depressive disorder, where I was suicidal for quite a number of years after my career. So in a nutshell, it was how I unraveled. It was extremely quick in the end. So after I finished that last bikie job, that 18-month investigation that we ran, 4 weeks later, so I deteriorated that quickly. 4 weeks later, I couldn't go back to work. I was laying awake all night with panic attacks, and I describe it like having an out of control newsreel where I just had this continual flashbacks laying in my bed at night, where I was just all the things, many things I hadn't considered or remembered for many many years. All these things were just flooding back into my consciousness, and so basically that was the end of my career. I was so broke. They sent me off to trauma clinics, residential, lots of treatment, lots of medications over a long period of time too. Um, but eventually, 3 years after my exit from the police force, I tried to take my life. I was basically I was swimming in circles with lead boots and not making any progress. My marriage fell apart. I ended up trying to take my life, ended up in hospital. But, I'm one of the lucky ones. I got a second chance where a lot of people don't. And I've really taken that second chance in both hands and run with it.
What's it like when you realize that it didn't work? When you tried to end
To
it
take
and
my
it didn't
life,
work? What's it like?
I was grateful, mate. And this is the thing. It's I guess there's a lot of you got to be always got to be careful talking about suicide. But I had massive issues of suicide for those 3 years I've been out of my career that I love so much. And as a detective, one of my jobs was to investigate suicide. So any unnatural deaths, I had to go out and investigate those. So dozens and dozens of suicides over the course of my career, and they're nearly all blokes too. Men overrepresented in suicide statistics, 3 out of every 4. So I had a deep fear that is going to happen to me. This is going to be the way my life ends. And I think one of the biggest barriers for me actually going down that path for 3 long years, being able to hold out so long, was the fact that I was quite aware of the distress I would cause my former colleagues by actually doing that. And that was probably the biggest barrier for me. But look, it's sort of in the end, I'm so grateful because it gave me a real fright. It's a shame it had to get to that point because you can't, once you made that decision, you can't undo it. And so, as much as I don't regret anything in my life, I choose not to. I would have preferred to maybe make the choices that I eventually made after getting that fright before making that decision, because it has a huge impact on so many people, not just me, but family, friends, and the wider community. That's a big thing.
Do you think if you were more, you spoke about the stigma or the intensity, what I'll call the macho intensity of being in law enforcement. Do you think if you would have thought about it earlier or dealt with it earlier or handled it earlier or internalized it earlier or not hit it, that you could have avoided the burnout?
Yeah,
Or do you think
definitely.
it was the path of the natural path?
Inevitability. No, I think I have zero doubt that if I'd got onto it early, I would have been a different situation. I actually, when I went to when I had this in-house treatment at this traumatic brain injury centre at a big hospital, Westmead Hospital in Sydney, they don't take everyone on the program. You had to get through 2 days of assessments before they took me on. And when they gave me the news, said, "Mate, yeah, we're gonna take you on this program." I actually asked the doctor. She was a doctor of psychology, and I said, "Lucy, mate, I've got this question I need to ask you. If I'd actually put my hand up and ask for help, like 8 or 9 years ago when I first having nightmares, before all the other stuff started creeping and destroying my life, would it have made a difference? And I was sort of hoping she'd say no. But she said, Craig, if you had done that, within 5 1-hour sessions, we would have had most of it sorted out. We would have looked after you moving forward for the rest of your career. You'd still be in that job that you love. And who knows the situation of your family. 5 1-hour sessions. Now, for my whole journey
I
after
will
my
just say
career
it's
in the
easy
police,
for her to say that in hindsight. I will say it's easy
yeah,
for someone to say
I,
that in hindsight.
I think it's true though, because if you get onto it early before it gets too embedded, that's where the difference is made. All right, and I truly believe it would have made a massive difference. But you know, one of the things with that is there's a lot of treatments out there, sure, and not all of them are just magic bullets. So my eventual recovery was me coming up with my own game plan, not any doctors or clinicians. So um, as a result of not getting that early help when I should have, I've now had over 300 hours of clinical sessions with all the psychs and doctors, etc. And that was predominantly in that first 5 years after discharge from the police force. So 5 sessions compared to 300, yeah, it would have made a big difference. But I didn't. I chose not to. And there's some valid. I had some valid fears of that. My main barrier for not putting my hand up when I should have was I had a deep fear that if I actually said anything, my career would be over. That's my deepest fear, and so I didn't want that to happen. And as it turned out, I lost my career because I didn't put my hand up. You know what I
Isn't
mean?
that
So it's quite
unbelievable?
ironic,
I was
yeah.
literally thinking that as you were saying it. Isn't it ironic?
Yeah, it's just crazy. So it's sort of that's one of the main reasons I do what I do now, getting out, doing advocacy and education. I do a lot of work with the police force now in this space as well, and with retiring police as well. But my main message is just trying to break down those cultural barriers to help seeking, um, and I talk about masculinity a lot too in different forums that I get invited to different places to speak. And um, there's three key pillars of masculinity for me. I really get people to, especially men, especially in the way things have been going over the last 10 years or so. It's like, be proud of your masculinity. Don't be ashamed of it. Be proud, embrace it, but also respect it. So for me, the three key pillars of masculinity is be a protector, be a provider, but also be vulnerable. So allow yourself to accept when you're struggling and you're having trouble dealing with things on your own. Reach out to your mates, reach out to your family, reach out to professionals if you need to, and get things sorted out. So that's really important as well.
I love the irony there. You teach resilience, and your calling has changed, and dare I say, equally as important, if not more important, than the work you were doing before. I look at your books. I think that if there wasn't the cop who fell to earth, then there wouldn't be the man who could write Getting Back Up Again. And I think that very often people look back, and obviously, I am not saying that any person deserves to go through the pain, physical and emotional, that you did. But the thousands of people who have benefited from that would not have benefited from it if you didn't suffer the way you did. And it's a powerful thing about the world, but also about Keep Hustling, in that almost every negative circumstance can be turned into a positive influence on the world. I think it was Gandhi who said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And so many people, when they finally turn over that leaf, they put in all the work. They don't use that or leverage that experience to move the world forward. And I think it's great. I think it's great that you did. I have to ask you before we close, you teach a lot about resiliency. What is the most important feature of developing resiliency that young people or young entrepreneurs or those who are struggling right now can work on, can lean into to make their lives better and ultimately gain in the long run?
Good question, mate. Look, the reason I recovered is I came out with my own recovery game plan. I think having a plan all the time is something that's really, really important. So when we go through life's adversities and challenges, sometimes it's easy to fall into a real negative victim mindset where you feel overwhelmed by a situation you can't see a way through. My key piece of advice for anyone when they hit a hard time in their life is get a pen and paper out, sit down, write out a game plan. Like it gives you, when you write out a plan for dealing with life's challenges, it helps you identify what your key challenges are and the actions that you need to put into place to overcome them. gives you a better sense of direction and a better sense of control, so you don't fall into that victim mindset. So, and part of that's having a well-being game plan as well. While you are well, set one up so that you've got something to fall back on when you're not. And that's things like having a really good attitude and approach to exercise and your physical health as well. Good sleep, practicing meditation if you can get someone to show you how to get involved in meditation. It's sort of all these things are like protective factors against the risk factors.
I agree with you 100%. And I say this about, entrepreneurs or people that are hustling or pushing every day. And this is, this show is not about creating burnout. It's about telling people that when you feel that burnout or like you're getting there, you can keep hustling to your own drum and achieving your own success. And I think maybe one of the key lessons is from your whole story is if you can have the plan for when things get tough, when it's not tough, you're able to catch it. If you know the parachute is there, if you know what the parachute is, even if you don't use it today, you don't use it tomorrow, you don't use it the next day, you may not use it for 10, 15, 20 years, constantly making sure the smoke alarm has a battery in it and that you have that plan makes it so that when you need it, you're able to utilize it. So
that's a good point too, mate. The other side of that too with burnout is I say to people, you've got to put your motor vehicle in for a service on a regular basis, grease and oil change, all that sort of stuff. If you don't, your motor's going to blow up in your car. And so everyone goes to that effort, but we often don't do it with ourselves. It's that maintenance side of things. So I think that's an important point.
100%. Craig, thank you again for being here. As you know, we have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational or inspirational quote and what it means to them. So with that, I will say, Craig, thank you again. Craig Semple, all the way from Australia. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being so vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for making the world a better place. And thank you for inspiring my hustle. And with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Look, one of the book that that's probably had the biggest impact on me I've ever read was by Eddie Jacku. It's a worldwide bestseller called The Happiest Man on Earth, a fellow who survived the Holocaust. And I have a stack of quotes written down somewhere from him, but one of my favorites is, "Your efforts today will affect people you will never know. It is your choice whether that effect is positive or negative. You can choose every day, every minute, to act in a way that may uplift a stranger or else drag them down. The choice is easy, and it is yours to make."
And I appreciate you making that choice to make the world a better place and to keep hustling.
Thanks, Aaron. Been a pleasure to be with you today, mate. Thank you.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.